In my opinion, life is not to be taken as a challenge. It's a mystery to be solved. My name is Narendra Kumar Bhatnagar. I was born in Kanpur on October 31st, 1929. Kanpur, there is a mohalla, a locality known as Nawabganj. That is where I was born and I lived there till about 36, 37. Now, my father was a professor of history in the local VSSD college, which was quite reputed in those times as one of the only second college in the country which provided MCom degree and MA degree in various subjects. I have very pleasant memories of that locality. Our house was in a sort of a small compound wherein there were 3 families living. All 3 were professors. One was in agriculture college, the famous college of agriculture, probably the only till Pusa Institute was installed, and was locally known as Patthar College because it was a building totally made of sandstone. My father was in VSSD college. That was also a pleasantly looking building of the Oriental style. Another professor who was a professor of Hindi, Pandit Ayodhyanath Sharma, who became very close to my father, almost like a brother. He also lived there. And there was a small compound in which we as children used to play cricket, football, hockey, whenever it pleased us. So that was a very pleasant time. Some incidents of my childhood are very interesting. I was studying in a municipal school. I studied there up till from 4th to 8th class. And in the 8th class, it was about that time that the Congress Quit India movement was at its peak. So Gandhiji had announced that every student should come out, every office goer should get away from this office and paralyze the government totally. So at that time, a local leader had gathered a huge crowd with him. Usually, he was a poet also, that leader. I still remember his pet name, Kantak, some Bihari Kantak. He was a student of my father also, but he was very prominent. He brought a procession which was passing in front of my school. All the students in the school then gathered. Most of them then got out of the gate. Then the headmaster asked to close the gate. When I was running to get out, the gate was closed up. So I, my brother and my friend Indra Sharma, we just jumped the ball and Lalla Bhaiya. We jumped the boundary ball and joined that was a very, just for the sake of, I now recollect that it was nothing to do with Congress or Quit India movement, but the zeal of the movement was such that we all just joined. Another incident was we tried to learn swimming in Ganges. Ganges was close by, about some half a kilometer from my house in Kanpur. And once it so happened that my younger brother, who retired as Deputy Registrar, Lucknow University, he just, what should I say, was floating and then went out of control and was bubbling into the river. There used to be some pujaris who used to sit there looking after all that ghat. He jumped into and saved him and brought him home and told my father that this boy was about to drown. So my grandmother since then became very strongly opposed to our learning swimming in Ganges. But then all our friends used to, after school, on the way that ghat was, so we used to skip to that place. And once it so happened, we would take off our clothes and just put on our underclothes and try to swim. And on return, we used to put a stone and roll it and threw it to the third story. Once it so happened that the underwear just crossed the building and fell into the courtyard. My grandmother was sitting there. She felt that the cloth was probably put up for a drying, and it has fallen down with the wind. She went to pick it up and found a stone in it. She looked up and found some sand particles. Then probably she understood that somebody has been to the Ganges. And simultaneously we entered the house with our hair standing up and like that. She could understand we have been there and we have thrown it here. And she took us to task and said, "We'll break your legs if you go again there without any accompaniment." So that is another funny incident. I remember talks of independence going on there. In a later life, I also came to know that when the famous freedom fighter and a Krantikari, Azad, was running around, hiding himself from the forces of Britain, he once also stayed overnight at our place. I have a very vivid memory when King Edward, Prince of Wales, abdicated. Those days radio sets were very limited. So we in the night went to a friend of my father, and I very vividly remember hearing him declare his abdication and the speech given by Queen Mother there. So these are some memories. Also, it was rumored that it was a very sad day for India too, because Prince of Wales was a friend of Pandit Nehru, and if he had been a king, he would have granted us independence. So these were rumors which have stuck in my mind of those days. Our schooling started with a ceremony when a Pandit ji came to introduce us to education, and for that we used to have a takhti, which we call a wooden plank with a handle on the top of the head of that plank, and it was painted black with soot and rubbed with a bottom of a bottle to make it look very glassy sort, very smooth. And we used to have two pitchers, small pitchers of soil, in which we would soak this chalk, and with this kalam we called it. It was a very small wooden thing, setha, the type of weed out of which kalam was made. With that we dipped that in that chalk solution and then wrote Shri Ram, Om. Panditji wrote that and then we copied it on that, and then Panditji would put a tilak and make us say a prayer. That's how our education would start. Initially, writing small alphabets in Hindi and English were taught by my mother. Later on, we were admitted for our primary classes to a British school named as the Huddard School in Kanpur. The school had British teachers, 3 ladies, Miss Wilson, Miss Dutton, and there was one Miss Peggy. I still remember those 3 teachers. There was one male teacher also who used to sometimes come, but was teaching probably higher classes. In smaller classes, these 3 ladies used to teach us. Most of the students were there, British students, and the sons and daughters of managers and other officers of the mills surrounding that school. The school was probably started for education of those children, of those officers there. We were about 7, 8 Indians there, of which probably 2 or 3 or 2 more were Mohammedans, rest of us were all Hindus. But at that time we hardly knew what it was to be a Muslim or a Hindu or a Briton. We just played around, but there was a distinct feeling among the British students that they were somehow superior to us. But so far as the treatment given to us by the teachers, I didn't have any inkling of that. I still remember in the recess when we were all allowed to go out into the lawns, this Miss Dutton, big auntie we used to call her at that time, she would be sitting in the hall eating from a bowl some candies. I still remember very vividly, whenever I passed her, she would give me a fistful of those things and I would enjoy them. I have also memories of the festivals that the school celebrated, and one was one day prior to Christmas Day, they used to have an open boxing match sort of thing, and children would participate. And we didn't have gloves or anything, we have bare hands, we used to have boxing match. I remember very vividly that I was set up to have a boxing with a boy named as Peter. He was known to be a bully and everybody was afraid of him. When I was put up against him, my brother, my sister, my another friend, Pandit Adhyana Sharma's son, Lalla Bhai Sahib we used to call him, all of them became rather apprehensive that I will get injured. I still remember that I was sort of a stunned man sitting there. When the whistle was blown to come to the ring, I went up and without waiting I started boxing through and through. That boy fell down. It was a knockdown. So these are small, some memories. I remember there was a custom in that school that all students were renamed with English names. So I was named as John, my elder brother was named as Morris, and my sister was named as Noreen. A friend of my father, a very close friend, almost like his brother, Dr. Man Singh, once visited us and he was having a talk with my grandmother, and jokingly he told her that you see they have been renamed and soon they will be Christianized. My grandmother got very upset, and that was the end of our schooling in that British school. That was after 2 years of our admission. So that ended that period. I also have a very vivid memory of my elder sister's marriage. That was the big event before we left that house. Then something happened and we had to move. Pandit Adhyanath had built his house in a locality known as Nagar. So my father also shifted there. Initially we went and shifted into a 3-storied house, but the house didn't have electricity connection. So that is another very prominent in my memory, that we had kerosene lanterns in the evening. Each room was lighted with that lantern, and for about 3-4 years, from about 35 to 39, we even studied in those lights. We had a pleasant time there, had people around us. It was there in probably 39 that one evening my father used to take dinner late. After all, we had all had it. So he was having his dinner when there was outside a clamor that a fresh edition of some paper is being distributed. In those days, if anything happened, well, the newspaper offices used to issue a special edition, 1 page or so. My father asked me to go out and see what's there. So I brought that issue, and on that paper, in huge bold headlines, it was written, Germany declares total war against Britain. And that started a series of hardships for people in India. At that time, the famous Prime Minister, later he became Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he had come to Kanpur after doing his high school and joined SD College there, where my father was also teaching. One evening, he along with his friend, I still remember the name R.B. Sontake, both of them came and talked to my father something. We were playing cricket outside. Then my father called me and my brother and some others that from tomorrow these 2 gentlemen will come and introduce you to some Indian games. So that is how we started a shakha just on a plot, barren plot in front of our house. That was our first meeting there. We used to play kabaddi and kho-kho and other games. And after an hour or 2, we will disperse. Because of this, we used to spend our evenings in that shakha. Gradually, after some time, we were introduced to singing the song, anthem of RSS. That was about 3-4 years later. But till then we used to have only those games. When we shifted in 1939 to our own house, then the shakha also shifted just behind our house. And at that time, it was around 42, we saw an influx of people from Bengal. I was told that there was a famine, and later we came to hear that that famine was artificially created by British by exporting food material for the forces. And the sudden inflow of Bengalis was because also that Japanese forces had started bombing Calcutta and nearby places. There had been, later in life I came to know that it was probably Chittagong or 1 or 2 other places that were bombed. But then the chances were that Japanese forces would invade Calcutta also and move in, and they were in unison with the INA forces led by Subhash Chandra Bose. So that influx created also supply position. Besides, the rationing was also present there, and shortage of food supplies reduced our ration. So that there was a great shortage of rice and sugar particularly, and cloth also. These were rationed, and things became quite difficult for us. My father we had just moved into our new house where we had plenty of vacant plot also for gardening. So we started, my father used to allot also all brothers of my brothers a piece of land and said that you grow something in it. So one brother grew some dal in it, some were asked to grow sweet potato, some other thing, brinjals, and then same, papaya, guava, etc. So that is how we supplemented our situation, but life in general was quite hard at that time. This somehow passed, and in 45 we heard that there was a fall of Berlin, and that shut off the war. That I remember still. There was a huge celebration in our locality, and in the park we had a huge statue of paper statue of Hitler, like that we have on Dasahara we have of Ravan, and that was lit. A huge crowd had gathered. That is how we celebrated closure of war. Then news was started coming that we are likely to get independence, but at the same time there may be partition into Pakistan and Hindustan. Those were again very trying times. Lots of what you call Hindu-Muslim riots started in the country. At that time in 47, when I was in Delhi with my maternal uncle, and my father asked my maternal uncle to send me back. So I took the train from Delhi. I remember when my mama sent me in a tonga to the station. On the way I found corpses lying on the road. Roadblocks created every 100 feet. I didn't know anything except that I shuddered inside. When I came to Kanpur, at the station, they looking to me as a small young boy, they asked me, where do you want to go? I told them I want to go to Harinagar. Then he told me that don't go via the city, go outside the city through the main mall road. And there on the way we heard that huge riots had taken place and even children had been killed. My own mother, who hailed from Lahore, was very disturbed because it was said that most of her family, her sisters' families, all were in trouble there. Though fortunately later all of them had been able to escape Punjab and come over to Delhi. But meanwhile she had become almost a nervous wreck. So that was the time, the huge turmoil was there at the time of partition. But at the same time, there was a certain relief somehow that the war has ended. Although rationing continued for some time after that, but gradually the severity of shortages started coming down. That was the time when a lot of political news were happening, and I could see behind my house. I had given up RSS at that time, primarily because there was a dispute between me and some of IAPs, including Atal Bihari Vajpayee, whom I had approached, that if we want to have more numbers, then we must shift to football and cricket instead of kabaddi, which leads to uh, loss to our friends, Bengalis particularly, who were very hard pressed at that time. But he didn't agree because these were foreign games. I tried to convince them that all the equipment was made in India, and we earlier had similar games in India also. Ancient scriptures even also say that, but they didn't agree, and so I gave up RSS. At that time, when the independence was announced, I remember at that time, nevertheless, in spite of my dispute and my having left the RSS shakhas had grown in number in Kanpur. Practically whole day from 5 in the morning till 8 in the evening, there was various sessions of shakhas for different people, shopkeepers, old persons, young people, school-going people, and so on. So that was the scene at that time. Congress people were also there. I was not politically conscious at that time. We were all sort of enthused of getting independence. And one particular day, memory I have very clearly in my mind is the day we were to hear Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru giving his famous speech. That was to be at midnight, and we didn't have a radio, so we went to a friend's house, Pandit Adhyanath Sharma's house. He had a radio, and we listened to the famous speech. And that was a thrilling moment in life. Then I had just taken up violin playing, so I wanted to join a school to learn it. When I went there, I came to know that the school has been closed, is not open today. So I came back, and in the bazaar, while I was returning, near the house of Pandit Adhyanath Sharma, my father's very close friend, whose son was also a very close friend of ours. I saw Panditji standing outside. He called me, "Naren, where are you going?" I said I had gone there to learn, to join a school to learn violin. He said, do you know, Mahatma Gandhi has been assassinated. So, and the whole bazaar was closed. It was a very strange situation, not even during war that had happened. Every shop was closed, and the whole city was like a dead city. So that was the situation. And after some time, we learnt that the RSS has been banned. So that gave me also a worry, that because I had been in the shakhas earlier, and my brother was still a member there, though he was then in medical college. So Pandit Adhyanath Sharma's nephew, he was DIG at that time, posted in Lucknow, where my brother was also in medical college. I remember he came surreptitiously and told my father to call my brother away from there, because all who have been related to RSS will be arrested. So in the night, my father got him back. So that was the political situation at that time. Gradually things quietened, and then we returned to normal life, till of course several years when the Indo-Pak war happened. By then, three of my brothers were already in the army, and they were my younger brother Ashok, Colonel Ashok. He was in the Mountain Artillery Brigade, posted in Bikaner, and that was in 71. He was in the night told that your unit has to move, and they moved to Tejpur. The Chinese invasion had happened. We all got very worried. My immediate next brother, Brigadier Bhatnagar, Virendra, he was also in the army. He had also participated in the war with Pakistan. So then later both of them were in Bangladesh, and during the war, my elder brother who was a doctor, he also joined army on emergency recruitment. He was posted in Ladakh. So that was another period for the family where all of us kept worrying all the time that four of us were in danger and risk. That also passed, and then came the times of Indira Gandhi. They were also momentous events during that period. Corruption issues against Indira Gandhi also cropped up. There was some person who had imitated her voice and withdrawn a lot of money. And then it was rumored that Indira Gandhi had asked him to do that. Then I have the memory, at that time I was in Jaipur. I joined service in Rajasthan government. The Maharani of Jaipur had joined another political party, Swatantra Party. So perhaps Indira Gandhi had become anti to her, and she decided, after abolition of what you call princely states, she ordered a raid on her family, and lots of gold and other things were shifted from Jaipur, one of the forts, old forts. And later we heard rumors that it was all gobbled up by the Congress party, and no account is available of that. All sorts of these things were happening. Very prominent in my memory is the assassination of Indira Gandhi. I was to retire from service after 3 months when this happened. Then Rajiv Gandhi took charge, and he extended the age of retirement for all government people. I was one of the beneficiaries. Then Rajiv Gandhi also visited Jaipur, and just behind where I was living, his uncle lived there, one Mr. Kaul. I remember he visited, and we also all went there and saw him very close quarters. And at that time I was posted in the Board of Revenue, where our job was to send crop estimates by a particular date to the central government as well as to the state government. And that was a huge task. Even typing took about a month, those tables, which had about 100 columns and more than 100 rows. So it took time. At that time, Rajiv Gandhi's introduction of computers gave me an idea that I should introduce computer here. And I started corresponding with firms like HCL and others, these were the firms coming up. So, and one time, this HCL person came to me and said he can give me a computer in 1 lakh. So I approached my chairman that because of these problems we are delayed always in sending our estimates. So if we get a computer, it would help us to be very timely and it will add to our efficiency. Luckily, the chairman was a very nice person, an IAS officer. He said, what is the cost? I said, 1 lakh. He said, this is in my power, I can give you. Let me have a demonstration. But in fact, that computer was a very large sort of calculator. But it could print and it could take memory program on which only feeding the data with that program, the things could be produced on the teleprinter. So we got that, and that is how I started this thing in the government of Rajasthan. Chief Secretary, Minister, they used to visit us to see what is that miracle sort of thing. Even Chairman RPSC visited us if we could produce his results on that, and so on things got there. Life in general, in some ways, improved a lot, in particularly materialistic way. I remember when I was a student in my intermediate class, I didn't have a bicycle, and all my friends had one. So I felt particularly deprived. But at the same time, we used to hear that in foreign countries in the West, children who grow up to be in their teens, they start doing jobs and earning their own money to meet their needs. So I decided to join a person known to my father. He used to store things in a small room and did business something like the present online business. He used to get orders and would send them and get money for that. But he had a lot of typing work. So he was in search of a typist. His son was my friend, so he talked about it. I said, I can do it. I can type letters for him. But the condition is you should not tell anybody in my family. That's how I got into that. My idea was that I'll earn some money and buy a bicycle for myself. So I joined it, and in the afternoons after the college, I used to go there and type his letters and come back quietly to my home. Somehow the news trickled to my father. He knew I was very disturbed. He told me that you have slapped me. What is it that I have not provided you? And that sort of feeling he had, that perhaps I told him frankly that because of this, and because I've read that in West people, young people, do jobs to get their money and meet their needs. He didn't say anything to me, but he said, no, you need not go there. Next day I got a bicycle and a watch. So those were the times. Then I remember things started easing a bit, but in some ways things were difficult. Particularly in my personal life, my mother had gone very seriously ill, and after the war, rather during the war, all our help, domestic help, had gone home. Most of them were from Gonda, a district in UP bordering Bihar. So even small jobs like cooking and washing and these things, they were very difficult at that time. And it was that time when all of we, 7 brothers, one after the other, after completing our education, migrated to our service places. My brother went to Bhopal. I went to Dehradun, where I joined as a lecturer there. Sister had been married, but unfortunately she widowed just after 2 years of her marriage. So all those troublesome times were there. But then the life was going on, but it was quite hard. My father then had retired, and as a professor, he probably throughout his life got his fixed salary of 900 rupees. When he joined in 30s, 900 was a princely sum, and we had a luxurious life. But in 47 and 55 and 60, those same 900 rupees extended to about 1,000 rupees was a meager amount for a family of about 12 people. So that was very hard. And I must say, to the credit of my father, that he educated us all brothers in universities, not only in college at Kanpur. I was educated at Allahabad, my brother was educated at Lucknow, other brother was sent to Nainital, another brother elsewhere. So that we all had university education. But comparing to that, somehow, we didn't have a life, a service, which could say that it was compensating for this. That is a sort of a guilt that I harbor in my heart still. General life in general had improved if you compare with those days of 40s and 50s. But looking to other places, other countries, particularly West, we as an economy were not very well off, except a few years just after independence. After first election, things were better, probably because of the emotional atmosphere in the country, and also because of the lesser strain on the economy of war reparations and war effort. But then gradually things were difficult most of the time, until 62 war wherein Lal Bahadur Shastri, as Prime Minister, asked the people to forego lunch once a week to overcome the food shortage. At that time we used to have wheat from America under PL 480, and that was a rotten sort of wheat that we used to get. And at one point, to assist Pakistan, the US government said that India should follow certain things, unless otherwise PL 40 would be scrapped. It was at that time that Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri, in his famous speech at Jaipur, I heard it personally, he said that we should give up food for one time only, except for women, children and very old people. So that he told us with data that because of this, we will make up for the shortage and we will not depend on any other country. I remember those days when, while traveling, if that was the Thursday or something, when we were exhorted to observe a fast. Even on the platform there would be no food, no water even. So that was the commitment of the country as a whole at that time. And we overcome. And that probably opened up, gave place to an idea that the government should build up stores of wheat and other food grains. That improved the situation so far as food grains was concerned. But rationing continued, and the associated corruption with that, all that continued. and to some extent continues today also. In certain senses, things have improved. Industrialization has increased, which has enabled us to have even very sophisticated things like your camera. We didn't have in those days. I remember one of my nephews, his friend used to visit Britain and would on return bring a camera and some Parker fountain pens and these things and would sell at exorbitant prices, and that is how he made up for the cost of his travel. That had become his business. So now things are much better, but politically things have also changed over to a notion of differences between the sections of population. At a state level, people talk of Bengalis, Madrasis and Punjabis and this and that. I don't remember in my younger days people ever talked of these things. So I think Britishers should be given credit for that, they had united India. Although there were currents, sub-currents, which would say that Bengalis have benefits over North Indians in the government because they first landed up and got foothold there in Bengal. Some would say earlier there used to be Madrasis who would supersede everybody. So these were undercurrents, and nobody could say that there was favoritism there for this was. People also acknowledged that they were the people from Bengal or Madras or Punjab who occupied important sources, places in central government, were capable people, not just favoritism. So that was just an undercurrent of dissatisfied people. But now these things have grown up because of political things, and it has percolated even to religion. In my younger days, I think religion was your personal affair, except for politically motivated events like riots and other things. Religion was never apparent. Everybody used to practice. I remember my father's guru was a Hindu, but his guru was a Sufi, Mohammedan Sufi, who had advised him also to go to a Pandit, who had given him the intense, what we call the meditation practice. So those things have somehow gone into the background. And today, I find that everything, good or bad, happens because there is a certain political undercurrent to it. That is something very disturbing and difficult for an ordinary person to cope with. I started my career as a lecturer in economics in DAV College, Dehradun. That was in Uttar Pradesh, now in Uttarakhand, capital of Uttarakhand province. After 12 years, I felt, I had been married, I had a child. I felt that the salary was insufficient to maintain my family. I had example of my father in my presence. He was also a professor. How his salary remained constant and family increased, so he was in great difficulty. At the same time, that college was a private college. So somehow after my 11 years of service, they suddenly discovered that the college was overstaffed. And just before summer vacation, they started giving some of the lecturers, among them whom I was one, notices to find other ways of employment. They didn't check us out, but every summer vacation, beginning of summer vacation, they used to serve this notice. So, once when I returned from Kanpur to Dehradun after summer vacation, I received a letter from the Vice Chancellor of Agra University, to which this college was affiliated, that why was I not trying to get an alternative employment in spite of your college giving you so many notices. I felt insulted and very disturbed. I wrote to my father at Kanpur that I am coming back, and you please tell the management if they can adjust me in their college in Kanpur. I got an appointment there, I came back. But then I realized that even there, the pay salary was not regular, and the college was maintained by the same management. So I started feeling that I must get a permanent job, a pensionable job preferably. So in the meantime, I got to see an advertisement of the government of Rajasthan that they needed a short time appointment for Assistant Director Economics and Statistics. Since I was Professor of Economics, I had statistics also, a paper during my graduation. So I applied for it. And though it was a short term appointment for 3 months, until a person selected by PSC, Public Service Commission, is appointed. So I joined there in the hope that ultimately I will be selected. And I did get selected. So I started the government service in Rajasthan, Jaipur, as Assistant Director of Statistics. I was given the job of research because I was a PhD also in finance. That is why probably they thought I would do better to do research work. And I was assigned to build estimates of state income, GDP of the state, and associated work. So I did that for 5, 6, 7 years. And then this was in 1962. And then after 8 years working there, I was transferred to Board of Revenue in Ajmer. There we had to collect agricultural statistics, do census work, and perform this livestock census, animal census as they call. That was also a job. Then crop estimation surveys were conducted. So I did all that thing. I don't think we had any political leaning till, of course, a very recent time. I remember Lakshmimal Singhvi, he was elected in 1963, his first. He sent me an invitation to attend a conference he was holding in Jaipur. But then my colleagues said, don't go there. Government servants are not allowed to participate. So, but I feel that was a mistake, because later on when I met Singhvi, who used to come to my room often in the hostel, he didn't recognize me. But at that time he had just retired as High Commissioner, London. So I felt that that was a mistake. I should have kept my contacts. I have played kabaddi with Atal Bihari Vajpayee also. I told earlier to you. But then I didn't keep contact. But he remembered this, because once when I was in trouble about the registration of my house in Housing Board in Jaipur, I wrote a letter to him that the government has somehow stopped the scheme of registration just after a month. So it seems it was to benefit only some people, whereas I am also one of the persons who need this registration. So if you could help me. He didn't reply to me, but then probably sent this letter with as the government procedure is, for necessary action or something on the margin, sent to Bharan Singh Shekhawat in Jaipur. He was the CN. And next day the scheme was announced. So I think he probably remembered and connected and helped me that way. But I didn't seek any help or meet him after that. He was too much in politics. Of course, I followed his poetry recital sometimes. He was a good poet also. But then I didn't have too much of leanings toward politics. I am a religious person. I think I owe this to my mother. When she used to pray every evening, and her procedure was she used to go up on the terrace and would keep praying and mumbling her prayers, moving up and down the. Once I still remember, I used to go up. She would hold my hand and I would walk while she used to say, "Vinti sun lo hai Bhagwan, kripa karo Nidhan." So this, I attribute that probably the seed was laid there. Then my father was also very spiritual. So in my 9th class, in my room upstairs, in an almirah I had some books which my father had collected. There was a series of books written by Vivekanand on yoga, 4 types of yoga. I used to read them, and in one of them I read that doing yoga is something which improves the intellect as well as keeps the body in fit position. So by my 10th class, I also found there an album of Swami Rishikesh. There was a person from Rishikesh, now I am forgetting his name, Swami Shivanand. There were photographs of him performing certain yogic asanas. So I looked up them and started doing those yogasanas. And in the book by Vivekanand, I read that dhyan is to be done, how it is to be done. And I started doing that automatically. One of my uncles, though he was a senior student of my father's, senior contemporary of my father, but all his life he used to call him Tauji, elder brother of my father. And he lived like that. He had given up everything and had become a sannyasi. So twice a year he used to visit. My father once told him that this boy is practicing these yogasanas. I don't know if he is doing them correctly. Please look into it. Then he quietly came and saw me doing that, and then told me that some instructions, and then said, "I saw you doing dhyan also." I said, "Yes, I practice like that." So he told me to pray with what you call mala. I have regrets, of course. One great regret is I couldn't serve my parents as they had brought us up in luxury. I couldn't help them because earlier, when I was in my first employment, I was a lecturer. It was not well paid job. I could barely afford myself. Of course, part of the loss was because of my expenditure on smoking. I had caught the habit when I was in my graduation. Incidentally, I might also say that initially I was very much against those who smoked. But then once I went to the hostel to meet a friend for combined studies, he was having his lunch. He said, "Hey, let me have my lunch." I said, "Yes." It will take 5 minutes. I said, "Go up." After lunch, he said, "Let me have a smoke." I said, "Go ahead." Then, as the manners of those days were, he also gave me the packet cake. "You also have it." Till then, I didn't smoke. He started saying, uh, that boys these days try to be very upfront type, but inside their houses they do that. Then as a retort, I told him, this is a very cheap cigarette you are smoking, get me a better one. Those days there was costly cigarette was 999. I am talking of 49. So I thought that in the hostel he cannot get this brand. He asked somebody and the fellow brought it. Then he said, you will have to smoke now. And I took the first puff and nothing happened. I enjoyed it. So that started. In those days, when I used to go for an evening walk with my friend, I used to buy 2 cigarettes. One I used to smoke while going and one while returning. That was only.
So
but
how old are you that time? In which year?
What's the name of that friend? Can you remember the name of the friend?
Yes, Shriman Narayan Srivastava. He was my class fellow. Very long time friends we were, even after.
Which year and how old are you then?
That was 49. And I was born, not 49, 47. 46, 47.
So in 47, 2 things come. India got independence.
Independence, yes. That smoking habit turned almost wild in course of my life. When I ended in 1968, I gave up smoking, the year my father died. At that time, I was smoking almost 100 cigarettes a day. That was terrible. And I used to have some heart problems. Then the doctor, a friend of my niece, sister-in-law's daughter, who was also studying medical there, and that doctor said, if you want to live for these children, they were small people. Jaya was about 6 years old. So he said, if you want to live for them, give up this. And that was the day I dropped it, and have not touched it yet. So that was another regret. Had I not been smoking, probably I would have saved some money, may have served my father better. I could have provided more luxurious life for my children. That is another regret. One more regret is that I did not exploit my talent in music to the extent the opportunity I had. Ustad Alauddin Khan, I went to meet him in Allahabad. He asked me to come to Mayer. But those days I was studying for my post-graduation. I couldn't go. Then all the rest I don't have more than these 3-4 regrets. Of course, my health has put my family to difficulties and trouble. But God's grace, I have not given them very severe difficulties, I hope, throughout my life. But somehow I have had occasion to be with my second daughter most of the time. And in most of my illnesses, she has been helping me and supporting me. Once when I was traveling to USA, another fellow passenger just beside me also asked me this question, what is life? So I told him, in my opinion, life is not to be taken as a challenge. It's a mystery to be solved. Every event and every happening in your life, take it as you would see a picture or something, and try to find out what it is about, what is the message, or when the event takes place, why it has happened. And that's what I think life is. If you take it as a challenge, a certain confrontationist attitude develops, which doesn't let you face the situations in a very cogent and proper manner. So I think life should be taken as a mystery, a game to be played to the best of your ability, best to be played with your better qualities in play. Negativity has to be avoided as far as possible.